Welcome to the Neighborhood Law Center. I'm your host, Melvin Burruss, and our guest today is Don Gathers, community advocate and also co-founder of Black Lives Matter. Welcome,
Here in
Don.
Charlottesville. Thank you.
In Charlottesville.
Yes.
Okay, make sure.
Yes. Yes.
I think you're taking over the world. Well, thanks for coming out today, even though you're
Absolutely.
feeling down under the weather. Before we get started, let's talk about Black Lives Matter and what got you involved with this program.
You know, it was directly founded as a result of some of the issues that were taking place here in the country. The death of Michael Brown, the death of Eric Garner. And when I say death, I should relate to those as murders at the hand of the local police agencies. And the mere fact that in the year 2020 we have to still make the statement Black Lives Matter should be troubling to any reasonable and morally pointed individual. It's sad that movement and this moment continue to happen, but as we can see as events unfold, there's still very much necessity for us to scream Black Lives Matter.
Okay, well that's good. Good start. Let's step back and say, Don, tell the audience a little about yourself so we can build the.
Well, I'm originally from Richmond. I've been here in the Charlottesville area now about 8 years. Have always had activism in my blood. I put in some almost 20 years as a union representative with the Communication Workers of America. And also did some work with the United Food and Commercial Workers Union. So it's all about trying to represent and help people and better their lives. Since I've been here, as you said earlier, I was one of the co-founders of the local chapter of Black Lives Matter. I'm a deacon at First Baptist Church on West Main Street. Married, the proud father of 3 outstanding young men in a blended family. I also work with excuse me, the UVA Equity Center. Do some work with the Billing and Advisory Council for the health system over at UVA, with some of the things that have been going on, the documented issues that people have been faced with, some of the really unnecessary work they've done as far as collections in the history. Worked with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes here over at UVA.
So your plate pretty full here.
Yeah. I was one of the initial members of the Police Civilian Review Board here, and of course the work that you and I collaborated on with the Blue Ribbon Commission on race memorials in public spaces.
Okay, well, let's move along here. What is the stage of progress of the Black Lives Matter now? Where do you think that stage is right now? What the progress you've made nationally as well as locally?
Yeah, this is an important moment in time, a huge blip on the timeline of history here in this country. We've seen where we've constantly been screaming this, and this evolved not only from Eric Garner and Michael Brown, but over 400 years of oppression and of brutality. And where we are now, we're at a point where I think that the awakening of white America has finally come to realization. We're at a point where others are screaming for us now, enough. Once we see these things unfold and manifest in front of us, where racism is happening in the moment, where it's being viewed now on a much more wider scale than it was with the issues in the South from the 60s during the civil rights protests, where the water cannons were released and the dogs were policed. Now it's instantaneous, and people can see what's actually happening to black and brown people all across this country as it unfolds.
With the law enforcement type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
who would have ever thought that we'd watch a man die before our eyes at the hands of a police officer simply because he refused to get up and get his knee off his neck, despite the cries for, "I can't breathe," despite the cries for his mother. That's just not the type of thing that any American is prepared to see anymore.
It's not unfund the police department. It's reallocating, and you could tell me if I'm right or wrong, to reallocate some of those funds for counseling rather than police involvement when they get into a situation.
When people say defund the police, it really means many different things to many different people. Some people are calling for the complete abolishment of police across the country. Others say that it means reform and reallocate. Because so often police are called out to situations that they're really not trained to deal with. Mental health issues, some social service issues that they really shouldn't have to be involved with. Because again, they're not equipped to deal with those sorts of issues. So when we talk about reallocating funds, first of all, those monies much of it should go towards better training. Much of it should go towards implicit bias training. Much of it should go towards, police agencies and bureaus being held accountable for the work that their employees are doing. If they want to fund civilian review boards, independent civilian review boards in localities, that should be looked at. They can take the time to, rather than when there's a lawsuit brought forth for improprieties by an individual, instead of the locality having to pay out that lawsuit, those monies should come from the local FOP, the local police agency, the local police union, that own individual's bank account, or even from their pension fund. Localities should not have to continue to pay, and taxpayers shouldn't have to continue to pay for the misuse and abuse of power that are being inflicted upon the citizens in that locality. Because what happens then is that individual, through their tax payments, they end up paying themselves back in that lawsuit. That's just something that we need to look at differently.
Are there any legislative, I think we were talking about the Law Enforcement Integrity and Accountability Act. Where's that at now? Are you familiar with that?
I am, and I'm also aware of the pillars that the Black Legislative Caucus here in Virginia have brought forth. That legislative summer action will begin on August 18th. The governor has requested that the legislators come back for a summer session and that they deal with some of these issues. From what I understand from our local delegate, who I love and admire and respect very much, Sally Hudson, much of what's going to be discussed is being kept very close to the vest right now.
Okay.
But we can expect some action, some steps, and some movement towards some meaningful legislation.
Well, she's doing a great job. I have to agree with you on that, and hopefully we can stay on top of that.
Yeah.
But what are some of the views that you have on these other groups starting to participate into these protests and creating the violence? Do you believe what can be done to stop this? Because in many cases, as in Chicago, that is blatant domestic terrorists when they, break into stores and rob everything else. Peaceful protests, great idea.
Yeah.
But there's some other groups that are coming in that are disparaging the work that you're doing.
And that's unfortunate. There's just no other way to put that. I understand that people are fed up with what we've seen. But I also understand that in many instances, the movement itself is being co-opted and infiltrated by those who want to give a black eye to BLM and to some of the other groups who are out doing the good work, who are out doing the peaceful protest, who are marching towards something. And that's just, it's unfortunate, and how we get around that, I'm not sure. But that doesn't mean that we stop the work that initially brought about the response in the first place.
Okay, that's good. Let's get into some of these other things you're involved with. Let's talk about the Charlottesville Clerical
Clergy Collective?
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that and what their mission is.
That organization was founded back again in 2017, and our president, Alvin Edwards, has done a remarkable job with the group of us and managing all the different personalities that are represented there. And it was in direct response to the summer of hate that we went through, with the Klan coming in July, and of course the Unite the Right rally in August, which today represents the 3-year anniversary of recognition of all the hatred that you can possibly imagine being inflicted on the community. And we continue to face the trauma from that. The Clergy Collective was founded and organized and originated to try to bring together like-minded people and to bring about a healing to this community, knowing full well what we were facing throughout that summer. And it's an organization representative of various clergy throughout the entire community. Participation is completely voluntary. The membership is doing an extraordinary work. We do work throughout the community to try to bring about recognition and a healing to this community that's still very much sorely needed. We're organized and involved in various issues in the community of back to school drives. Well, is another thing that we're doing. We come together for conversations in the community to talk about faith and the next steps moving forward. So the organization has its hands in a multitude of things.
Okay. One thing, as we had talked about, is with this coronavirus and people going back to work, there are labor issues that needs to be addressed before they go back to work.
Yeah.
I think it'd be a great idea for the Seville clergymen to have what we call a workshop and talk about how to protect yourself going back to work. What are your rights, and what you do if the employer has not followed protocols and making it a safe workplace. I'll take one short break here for the audience who's just tuning into the program. This is the Neighborhood Law Center. I'm your host, Melvin Burruss, and our guest is Don Gathers. And we're talking about some of the community activities that Don is involved with, which are some good activities, and as well as being co-founder of Black Lives Matter.
In Charlottesville.
In Charlottesville. Okay, gotta get that right. Yeah, and I've taken over the world. Right? In Charlottesville.
Not yet.
Okay. You're also involved with the University of Virginia Equity Committee. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
The Equity and Inclusion Center was originally founded through President Jim Ryan, and the original head of it was Miss Dana Matthews from the law school, one of the deans at the law school. It's now being headed up by Mr. Ben Allen, who's our director. And it was just about bringing to bear the fact that for so long UVA had not been a good neighbor, if you will, to the community, especially in terms of issues of equity and inclusion of minority employees and/or students. I'm happy to say that it was announced last night that they really are now putting some money behind what they're saying. They're beginning to take the steps to walk the talk that they've been espousing for so long. And I don't have the figures behind all of where they're placing some of these funds, but just I want to say it was $150 million that they're putting behind some of the efforts that are important and as they relate to our community, our black and brown students, and also the faculty there.
Okay. Can you tell us some instance of what programs you think they'll be putting money behind?
Well, the building of the memorial to enslaved laborers was a huge step. And where it sits on the grounds at UVA and what it represents and what it means. Where we've got those where they could actually dig them up, the names of those people who helped to actually build UVA, which is something that Thomas Jefferson always gets credit for. I dare say he laid one brick. It was the slaves that he owned that put in that work, that are now being recognized, and their families being recognized with the Descendants Working Group. And actually getting behind some of those efforts and putting some money behind some of those efforts so that they can do the work that's necessary to bring to light the important contribution that these individuals made to the community and to UVA as a whole.
Well, one thing I understand, they're putting money behind scholarships.
Yeah, and
you're
they
kind
might,
of lukewarm on that.
well, not lukewarm, but I'm just wondering what legal hoops that they may have to jump through on that. The request came forth that they just make scholarships available to the black descendants, to those who helped build the university. And I understand there's some legal hurdles that they would have to get over in order to do that. When you talk about having university-based scholarships on race. There are just some things that they've got to work themselves through, but the mere fact that they're willing to try to do it is important. It's a huge step for UVA.
Okay. Well, it sounds like a worthy call.
Absolutely,
what
absolutely,
you're
and a
doing
long
there.
time coming, and hopefully maybe it can become a model for other colleges and universities across the country.
You're right. You were once involved in on the board of the University of Virginia Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Can you talk about that and just tell us what the mission and the purpose of it?
Yeah, that's another very important group that is involved with a Christian mission in bringing athletes and enlightening athletes on the work of Christ over at the university. And I'm not on that particular board any longer, but I very much believe in the work that in their mission statement that exists here. It's a national organization, and it's again bringing both student athletes as well as coaching staffs into an enlightenment of Christ. I can't tell you the number of athletes who have been baptized through that work, as well as coaches. And thankfully, UVA has a plethora of believers on the coaching staffs of the various activities, as well as intramural sports there at UVA, that actually can teach and help spread those teachings of Christ to the athletes.
Have you I assume you've spoken to many of the athletes before.
Yes. My son actually is over at UVA right now as a football player.
What is the motivation for these Christian athletes to join this organization, to be a part of it?
Well, first of all, there's no pressure. There's no. The responsibility is truly their own. If they are seeking the knowledge, if they're seeking an enlightenment, if they're seeking an opportunity to learn more about Christ, then that opportunity is there to present itself to them. And it's something that they, like I say, they do an incredible work. And there's another body, Athletes in Action, who again have been around forever. And the mission is just on colleges, campuses, and universities to try to present Christ to many of these athletes. In many cases, many of them that had never had the opportunity or to hear anything about it, because so many of them come from foreign countries, where in some instances it's basically illegal to learn about Christianity.
And it's a good idea to form a group with like-minded people.
Yeah.
Which is pretty difficult sometimes when you go into universities. I guess.
The chaplain over there right now is Mr. George Morris. He does an incredible work. And the board and the committee as a whole just do, it's just a wonderful mission to make themselves and to make that opportunity available to not only just student athletes, but again, intramural sports and anyone who may have an interest.
Well, that's good to know, because we need more of those Christian athletes to kind of mentor and teach other people about the right way to live.
And the athletes themselves often start to begin their own Bible studies, their own huddle groups, if you will, where they can lead those discussions and those talks.
That's good. All right, so now we're coming to the part where you also, one of the organizations that you work for is not work for, or you volunteer your time for, is the University of Virginia Billing and Collections Advisory Council.
Yes, the Advisory Council. Again, I spoke a little while ago about the fact that UVA has not been a very good neighbor and good partner to the community. Some of their practices and procedures as far as collection on the health system billing has been, let's say, a little heavy-handed. We saw the Washington Post article that came out about these practices just a year or so ago. It's interesting that at the time that article presented itself, the original plan was to include the Medical College of Virginia down in Richmond. That's, of course, the medical side of VCU. When approached about this, my understanding is they immediately said, "No, wait, let's give us an opportunity to take some corrective steps," and they've done so. They've certainly been more of an active participant and displayed a willingness to work with those individuals that were adversely affected. People's homes were being taken that were generational homes that have been passed down through the family over just a health care bill. No one should have to go bankrupt to be able to have decent health care. I just don't think that's what this country was built on or founded on. But in many instances, that's what has happened. And UVA had continued to practice some of these adverse practices that cause so many people so many problems.
Well, my experience has been when you're in your 60s or 70s and you have a heart attack and you don't have insurance or very good insurance,
Right.
and you go to UVA, and of course, an emergency room and everything else, the bill is some kind of like $300,000, $400,000. And it's insane to think that someone who is living on Social Security or is living on Medicaid that can pay that kind of money back.
I myself am one of those individuals. I had a heart attack. I'm coming up on the 2-year anniversary of that. And I'm looking at, I was in the hospital for some 2 days, and looking at a bill of some $60,000+. And it's just, it is absolutely insane what we're doing as far as healthcare in this country. And the practices, I got that big brown envelope from the Attorney General's office down in Virginia, and the court dates and everything. And it is just absolutely ludicrous that you have to look at that type of thing, staring you right in the face, just to be able to have decent and affordable health care. And I was one of those folks who had insurance. It was crappy insurance, but I had insurance.
You had insurance.
And I just can't wrap my head around someone who has a major catastrophic event in their lives that's health related, and what they might be looking at on the back end of that, just to try to be well. It's just ridiculous.
Well, the injustice was taking people's homes.
Yeah.
Who have paid off their homes or put a lien on their homes when they were living in Social Security, living on Social Security or a small pension. That was a scrappy. All right, so let's move on from there. Let's talk about your fellow. I'm pretty interested in University of Virginia fellow for the University Natural Resources. Go ahead.
Leadership Institute?
Yeah, Leader Institute.
Yeah, I am officially a UVA fellow. I'm no longer just a dude, I'm now a fellow.
Okay.
Through the Virginia Natural Resources Leadership Institute. And I want to publicly take a moment to thank Frank Dukes and his entire staff that led that group. We just wrapped up our final session in June And we actually are taking a look at the erosion in many cases of our natural resources here in the state and really all across this country. I remember very specifically one of the weeks that we were out, we went to Tangier Island, and many people don't know that island actually is eroding on a daily basis. They're losing somewhere upwards of almost 10 square miles a year. And it's just a matter of time before the island itself is just gone. So we've got to figure out how to shore up and to save as many of our natural resources as we can. This is the only earth that we've got. And once it's gone, it's just gone. So we've got to take corrective steps wherever possible and by whatever means that we possibly can to try to save what's left.
Now, did this fellowship give you the tools or the knowledge that you can now go out and do kind of what you did with Black Lives Matter and
absolutely.
Accomplish certain goals that you may have?
Well, it's certainly given us the steps in order to go about trying to achieve those goals. And it's all about making sure that the community is aware, that the state legislature is aware, and that we, in fact, bring these issues to light whenever possible. I think that in many instances now, government is aware that we've got to begin to take corrective steps as we move forward if we want to save this planet and our country for our children, our grandchildren.
Okay. Well, it looks like we're running out of time. Thank you for your
hate
time.
That. I hate that.
I do too, because it was very interesting.
This has been pleasant. It's always good when I get
educational.
the chance to speak with you.
One thing I have to ask, though, that you kind of sum things up. What would you want to leave with the community, with our viewers, on the activities or the things that you're doing?
Well, there's still a lot of work to do, and there's still a lot of room for everyone to get out and do some of that work. As I said, today represents the 3-year anniversary of I would have to imagine, one of the most traumatic events ever to evolve itself here in this city and really all across this nation. In many ways, Charlottesville became ground zero for racism and for white supremacy 3 years ago today. So we've still got much work to do to try to eradicate that and to change the narrative and to bring to light many of the things that have been lied about for so long in this country and in this community. Those statues need to come down because of what they represent. The legislature, God bless them, they moved to take care of that during the most recent legislative session. But there's still a lot of work to do.
Okay.
And unless and until we can change minds, we'll always have these battles.
Well, thank you, Don,
All right.
for being here.
Absolutely.
And letting us kind of reunite at some of the great things that you're doing here in the community. Yeah. Again, I'm Melvin Burruss. We've been watching the Neighborhood Law Center. You can see it on the website, neighborhoodlawcenter.com. And thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Peace and God bless.